I'm Ann Forrest. I teach a lot of disaster preparedness classes. I volunteer with the Office of Emergency Management, although this is not a class that's sanctioned by them. It is out of my head. I was a Navy nurse for 20 years, and then I homeschooled for 20 years, and now I am fully retired and teach disaster preparedness. And I also work a lot with the emergency communication hubs here in Seattle. This is what we're going to go over. We're going to talk about landlines really quickly, touch on texting as a really good way to communicate after a disaster. And then the bulk of our time will be spent on radios. We'll talk about a couple other options and then some gear that's kind of fun that will help you stay powered up after a disaster. And that's using your car battery. So after an earthquake, this is the order in which you should do stuff. Take care of yourself and those around you first. That's always the most important. The second thing is control your utilities. So that's taking care of your gas, your electricity, and your water. And then this one, checking in with family and friends. That's what we're talking about tonight. So how do you figure out how everybody's doing? How do you get more information about what's going on? And then after you have touched base with your household members, then you put your plan into action, making contact, landlines. A lot of people think they have landlines. It is very unlikely that you actually do. And a true landline means that there is a copper wire going from the wall in your house to the phone company. Almost always that is broken somewhere and done in a wireless manner, which means that it's not a landline, which means it is as susceptible to power outages as any other kind of phone. So a true landline, again, would be a copper line all the way. Very unlikely. About 5 to 10% of the phones in Seattle that look like landlines are actually landlines. And after a disaster, they will be overwhelmed more than likely. Folks have a tendency to call 911 after a disaster, which is something we're trying to remind folks not to do. It's not helpful to anyone. If it was an earthquake, you'll know it's an earthquake. You don't need to call 911 to verify that. So only call 911 if you truly have an emergency. Somebody's life is at risk. Most people will get on the phone anyway and will try and call, and the landlines, if yours is a true landline, will be overwhelmed. So texting is always best. Texting is a very small packet of information. It goes out into cyberspace and it kind of floats around until it can get delivered to the person that it's trying to get delivered to. So really a good way to communicate. I want you to remember to include the date and the time in every text that you send, and make sure that your text counts. So here's an example of a really bad text. Oh my God, what was that? Are you okay? Where are you? What do we do now? Lots of questions there, not much information for whoever is receiving this text. All they can tell from that is that your thumbs work and that you are alive, but they have no idea where you are, what you're going to do, what your plan is, nothing like that. They don't know when you sent it even, because maybe it didn't get delivered right away after being sent. So this is an example of a much better text. I'm home and I'm fine. The pup is okay. I'm checking on neighbors, but I'm staying put. It's 4:25 p.m. on Tuesday. So lots of information, how I'm doing, what my plan is, the time and the date of when I sent the text. So make sure that when you send a text, it is a good text. You're actually sharing information, and hopefully other folks in your household will send that same kind of information back to you. So I want to talk about a way to increase your chances of getting your text to go through. So after a large disaster, it's sometimes easier to get a text out of the city and back into the city than it is across the city. So because of that phenomenon, we recommend folks find somebody that they call their out of town contact person. And this person, all they do is relay texts back and forth from the ground here in Seattle or wherever. The text gets sent to them and they forward it back down to people that are also in Seattle or nearby. So they just act as a relay, a forwarding component. They don't change the text. They don't need to interpret it. It's just forwarding it on so that maybe it will get delivered when it hadn't before. So you want your out of town contact person to be Spokane, Washington, or further east, not north of us, not south of us. You don't want them involved in the same earthquake or disaster. You want east, Spokane, Washington, or further east. And tell them what you want them to do. Explain what it is that this role can do for your family, your household members. So again, all they have to do is forward the text back down to other people on the text chain. And then also give them a list of things to do. They can call other people. For myself, my out of town contact individual is my mother-in-law who lives in Las Vegas, Nevada. She has phone numbers of people that I want her to contact if there was a large disaster. I want them to hear from her as soon as possible and not have to wait to get in touch with me. So reach out to them proactively and let them know that she has heard from me and I'm okay and the family's fine. So give them a list of things they can do. They will appreciate being useful. So when you're making contact, remember to, remember to designate an out of town contact person, make multiple copies of your important phone numbers and include that person's phone number because it's probably not a phone number you will remember. Tuck that list of phone numbers in multiple places, wherever you think you might, wherever it would be handy. Glove box, lockers, wallets, backpacks, purses, lots of spots. And then talk with your family members, your household members about how you will reconnect if there's an earthquake. And think about what would you do if it was a Thursday at 2 in the afternoon? That's kind of your window. It's during the week when everybody's out and about. When your family, your household members are spread out as much as they probably would be in a normal time. That's how you want to take that situation and figure out where you're all going to meet up and make your plan based on that situation. So now we're going to turn to radios. So why are radios good after disasters? It's because they work without the internet and without electricity. If you have a power source, which we'll talk about, if your radio is powered up, you can communicate. They don't take much power. It's not like, it's just not a huge amount. They're very portable. And we have the infrastructure in place currently. Folks are talking on these radios all the time currently. So, and then it's all the radio frequencies are all it's very well organized. This is a system that's been in place for, probably 100 years, and it's really well organized. So you can figure out a lot of how to do this before a disaster ever happens. And then it's a very reliable system. And we'll talk about battery backup and that kind of stuff. So the different types of radios that we're going to talk about, there's the FRS, Family Radio Service, GMRS, General Mobile Radio Service, and then ham radio, which is really amateur radio. I'm not sure why they call it ham. There's probably some reason, but I will probably call it ham radio most of the time. Hopefully you've got the handout that I sent a little bit earlier today. My apologies for not getting it out sooner. Life's been a little crazy lately, and I made some changes to this presentation just today. So those are the kinds of radios we're going to talk about. There's other types of radios, and there's more frequencies and all that kind of stuff, but these are basically available to civilians for use after a disaster or anytime. So if your goal is to communicate with folks in your neighborhood and that's your only goal, then FRS is not a bad idea. We'll talk about the pros and cons of that. If your goal is to communicate with folks within your neighborhood, but also across the city, I'll tell you, for my family, my partner works in Beacon Hill. So he has a GMRS radio in Beacon Hill in the office there that we can communicate with. And if there was ever an earthquake and he was at work, or some large disaster and he was at work, we would talk to each other on that GMRS radio. And then because it's portable and it's always plugged in and always charged, he would take that with him as he walks home or as he drives home, depending on how his plan is to get home. So it's really good across the city if your family members are scattered during the day. And then if you want to talk to folks in your neighborhood again, or across the city, or really far away, like Denver or Sweden, ham is really the only way to do that. GMRS radio is not that strong, and there's not that many repeaters. And we'll talk about that to talk to something like Sweden. So those are the types. You kind of have to figure out what your goal is for radio communication before you can really hone in on the type of radio that would be best for your situation. We'll go through a lot more about radio. So repeaters, I mentioned those. Repeaters make it possible for you to talk to somebody that's on the other side of a hill or really far away. If you can't see them and your radio isn't strong enough to penetrate walls and dirt, and concrete and everything else, then repeaters is how you have to, that's how you talk to people that are further away. You have to be able to connect with a repeater, and that repeater will send your signal on until it reaches the person that you're trying to reach. So kind of like a cell phone tower, they work very much the same way. Just one quick thing, the frequency, and I am not going to talk numbers about frequencies at all, but the input frequency, the frequency that you're talking on from your radio to that repeater, is different than the output frequency, which means your message goes in on one frequency but leaves on another frequency. It just makes it possible for that repeater to do two things at once: hear you and transmit your message at the same time. Otherwise, if they were on the same frequency, then the sound waves would mess each other up. So here are the GMRS repeaters. So not ham repeaters, but GMRS repeaters in Seattle. The numbers don't mean much. I think that number one, West Seattle is called number one because I'm assuming that was the one that was put up first. Number 2 is Beacon Hill, number 4 is Magnolia, and number 6 is in Maple Leaf in the Reservoir Park. So pretty much, yeah, I think it's fair to say that anywhere in Seattle, no matter where you are, what kind of valley you're in Seattle, you will be able to hit one of these repeaters. And these repeaters can convey your transmission from repeater to repeater. So you can reach pretty much everybody in Seattle using one of these 4 repeaters or several of them. So we'll talk about some of the lost my train of thought. Talk about some of the things that are different for all these different radios. So FRS is pretty much a fancy walkie-talkie. I think somebody has called them bubble packs because you're always buying them in 2s. They're just fancy walkie-talkies. Their range is only about a mile. You pretty much have to be able to see the person in order to communicate with them. So their range is very, very limited. GMRS radios are a little bit further, 1 to 2 miles without the repeaters. You can go much further if there's a repeater between you and the person you're trying to reach. And then ham radio. If you're talking radio to radio, it's a couple miles, but it's certainly much, much further, Sweden, if you have repeaters between here and there. So that's the range. License. Do you need a license to do these? FRS is no. GMRS and ham radio, yes, you do need a license. Your license covers, since you don't need one at FRS, doesn't matter, but if you get a GMRS license, it covers everyone in your household. So again, I'll take my situation. We have one GMRS license that covers myself, and I'm sitting at home with a GMRS radio, and my partner is in Beacon Hill with a GMRS radio. That one license that we have covers both of us. It covers our household. We actually have a third radio. Sometimes my son used to take it when he was going to high school in Seattle Center. He doesn't anymore because he's not going to high school. But if he had the third radio and he's out and about, again, he is covered because that license covers the household. Now, The license only covers the individual in, yeah, you need a license for every individual using ham radio. So again, same situation. I'm sitting here in my house using a ham radio. I need a license. My partner in Beacon Hill, if he were to use a ham radio, he also needs a license. The only caveat to that is if my partner was here, I could let him borrow my license, my rig, my radio. And if I looked over his shoulder and approved of everything he was doing, he could operate under my license. But as soon as we're separated by distance and we are on two different radios, he needs his own license. So one of what I think is the little bit more difficult side of ham radio is that everybody pretty much involved in this has to get a license, and that's asking a lot of people. Pretty much everybody in your household would have to use it, and then if you wanted to, like I have family over in Carnation. I bet, I've never tried this, but I bet if I went over there if I handed them a Gmrs radio, or if I went over there with one, I bet Seattle and Carnation can talk via Gmrs radio. They would have to get a license, a Gmrs license. So they would have to have a license. They'd also have to have a ham radio license if we were choosing to do that. Let me keep going with this. It'll make a little bit more sense. So is there a test? There's not a test with Gmrs or FRS. There is a test with the ham radio license. So there are 428 possible questions that they could put on the test. The test is 35 of those 428 questions. They'll pull out 35 of them, and you have to get 26 of them correct to pass the test. So it's not hard, but it is a lot of memorization. My personal opinion of the test, and I don't think it's unique to me, basically you are studying to take the test. I sat through a class, I studied, I passed the test, but I felt very unprepared to actually get on the radio. That was frustrating to me. A lot of other people loved the class, loved the interaction with the instructors. I was frustrated that I had to study to take a test, but the test didn't really help me get on the radio. And the test is $15 or around about there. Basically, you're paying the instructors, and then they get the test for you. So what can you transmit? What can you use this radio for? Typically, you're probably talking about just talking on a radio. That's what most people, I think, in this class are wanting to do. So, which is called voice. So you can use voice with FRS and Gmrs. If you get the ham radio license and a ham radio, you can do many, many more very cool things. You can send video, you can send email on a ham radio frequency. It takes a little bit more equipment, a little bit more skill, but it's very, very doable. It's incredibly handy. It's the reason that ham radio pops up after a disaster, because there's so much you can do with it. It's just so powerful. The next one is the cost of your license. These are the costs right now. The FCC, which is the organization that coordinates all this, has changed the fees. So it was $70 for 10 years, $0 for 10 years for the ham radio license. It is going to be $35 and $35 for either license for a period of 10 years. That has not gone into effect yet. It's supposed to have gone into effect, but it just hasn't. All the websites I checked, and I went to the FCC, and it's just not there yet. So something's held up in the process. I don't know if it's going to be 2 weeks or 8 months. Nobody really knows when this is going to happen. The FCC has to do a couple more little things to make this go into effect, but it is changing. So the cost of the radio, just buying a physical radio, the FRS radios are the cheapest. Gmrs radio, the one I'm going to recommend, and pretty much you can probably get a Gmrs radio a little bit cheaper. Maybe you get one for $45, but I'm going to recommend this particular radio because of several really cool qualities. And then ham radio, the basic one you can get starts about $45, and then it just goes way up from there. The more features, the higher power, the antenna, all that kind of stuff, it all adds up. And you can spend as much money or as little money as you want on ham radios. So there's the summary, and I'm fairly certain I put this on your handouts. So basically, if you're going to get a ham radio, if that's the way you want to go, it's better to do it now before the cost goes up. But if you're thinking about GMRS radio and funds are an issue, you might want to wait until the license fee goes down. It's going to go down by half. It's going to go down by $35. So, but soon, like in another year, ham and GMRS are going to be the same price pretty much. And that's adding in radios and the license fees and the test as well. So pros and cons of the radios. FRS is incredibly easy, very inexpensive. Like I said, it's a fancy walkie-talkie. The pros of GMRS is that there's no test. That was a big deal for me. It was interesting. I'm glad we did it. My whole family got it. But again, we took the test, we struggled, we stressed about it, and then we never got on the radio. It just didn't teach me enough to make me comfortable on the radio, and I didn't feel like going any further. The pro of the ham radio is that it goes so far and does so many cool things. The cons of an FRS radio is that it's very limited, really only helpful right within, around your home. The cons of GMRS radio is that every household needs a license. So it is, there is some expense there. The cons of ham radio is that every radio needs a license. So not only does your household have to have ham radio, but if you're talking to another household, they also have to be ham radio operators. And then the other con with ham radio, again, is the test. And I'm sorry, I keep pinging on that, but that was a big deal for me. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. Take a look at you guys. I didn't see anything in the chat. Does anybody have any questions right now? Okay. Hopefully, if you need to unmute yourself, you can. I did mute everyone. I'm not sure I can. Yeah, I'll go on. Please throw something in the chat if you're trying to talk and you can't unmute yourself because I turned that off. All right, so frequently asked questions with radios. Which radio is better? Depends on what you want to do. Can I reach someone in Renton on a GMRS radio? Sure. Edmonds, Belleville, Issaquah, all that kind of stuff, as long as there is a repeater somewhere between you and there. Do the GMRS repeaters have battery backup? So let's say there is a big earthquake or just a power outage like the other day where we had one. Do the GMRS repeaters have battery backup? Yes, they all do. Yeah, I see your comment, Sheila. I'll talk about that. Do the GMRS repeater? Oh, I did that already. How long would they last? Oh shoot, I should have looked this up. It might be on the handout that I gave you. I don't remember if it's like 24 to 36 hours. They'll last for a while. A lot of it depends on how much it's being used. The more the repeater is being used, the quicker it's going to run through battery. And then ham repeaters also have battery backup. It wouldn't be a good system if everything died a day and a half after the earthquake because nobody had any battery backup. So yes, they all have battery backup, and a lot of them have generators. And, so we just need to get fuel to them to run the generator, keep them up and running. How hard is the ham radio test? I'm sorry, I've already ranted about that. Where are the ham repeaters in Seattle? They are all over the place. There's just too many to even name. I told you about the four GMRS repeaters here in Seattle. There are many more ham radio repeaters in Seattle. And what GRMS radio do you recommend? It is, it's on your handout. Let me see, shoot. It is a GMRS, I'm sorry, it's a Baofeng BTEC one, I think. Anyway, it's on your handout, and I'll go through why I think it's a good why I think it's good radio. So we've talked about landlines, texting, and radios. Oh, I like the question about. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second and answer some of your questions. So super easy to find a trainer here in Seattle for ham radio. I don't have one, you know, there's not a favorite one. Just put in ham radio class Seattle. Just Google that. You will easily find something. They used to meet in person. I don't know if anybody's meeting in person anymore. You don't have to take a class if you don't want to. You can study and take the test on your own. You can find the bank of 428 questions, and you can just read through those questions and memorize the answers and then take the test. There's a couple different ways to do it. If you have specific questions or running into stumbling blocks or whatever, feel free to email me, and I'll come up with some answers.
Thank you. Yeah, I was away from my computer when you asked to unmute us, and so I was like, oh, I'll just type it. But I know there's also that monthly ham radio group in this emergency group. Do you feel that's a good, organization to talk to for somebody who's just getting into it?
So I think you're talking about ACS, which is the Auxiliary Communication Service.
Probably.
Okay.
Because I know there's a monthly meetup, or on the radio.
I don't think we're talking about the same thing. There's probably ham radio clubs. It wouldn't surprise me at all that, if there's meetups for ham radio operators. The Auxiliary Communication Service, the ACS, these are folks that are background checked by the city. They will be sort of deputized by the city after disaster. So they practice and they run drills with the city so that after a large disaster, they respond. They stand up and the city says, okay, we're going to give you a mission number and you are all covered. You have liability insurance and we're going to give you your marching orders. So they become kind of sort of employees of the city, and they help the city coordinate communications.
I was actually, that is cool. I didn't know that. I went to check the Seattle, the website calendar. I was actually looking at the GMRS weekly thing. That's what I was thinking. That's what I had in my head. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I will talk about that a little bit at the tail end of kind of how to get your GMRS. And yes, that is a fabulous way to get comfortable with your radio. So it encourages to actually get on and talk. And it also, if you do it enough Mondays in a row, it will tell you what repeaters you can hit very, very well and what ones don't work as well for wherever you are in the city. So incredibly helpful. And the guy that runs that, what's called a net, the guy that runs the net is really, really helpful and patient, especially with new radio folks. So yeah, I totally encourage you to do that. Okay, I'm going to go back to the screen. Any other questions before we get back into okay, so we're going to talk about, sorry, we've sort of finished the radio part. Not really, there's much more to come, but sort of finished the radio part. We're going to go talk about a couple other different options, other ways to communicate. And then we're also going to talk about powering your cell phone from a car battery. So other options is something called the portable mesh network. The one on the left is GoTenna. The one on the right is, Bear something. I forgot the name. It's on your handout somewhere. These work when you don't have an internet, so no Wi-Fi, and you don't have a cell phone signal. So very good after disasters. They pair with your smartphone. You can send your text, you can text and you can send your GPS location. The person that you're sending this information to needs one of these devices. And these devices, it's the little thing sitting next to the smartphones. Those devices pair with your phone and make your phone more capable, I guess is a good way of saying it. So if you had a household of two, you would have to buy two of these devices. They're typically sold in pairs, I think. And you would each have to have them with you, and your phone has to be on you and charged up. The range is 1 to 6 miles, which is not bad. And then there's a price for, kind of a general price for what these things cost. So really good option. They're kind of expensive, but they're pretty cool. I don't know of many downsides to these. I don't know much about them. I don't have any. They're nice and small. There's some cool features about them. So again, you could send a text. So you can send that really smart text about, I'm at work, I'm fine, I'm heading home in 45 minutes, it's 1 o'clock on a Tuesday. You could send that really good text. And then you could also keep sending your GPS location as you're headed home or whatever. So those are a good option. They're on your handout. And then satellite, they're not phones, they're satellite messengers. That's another really good option. Obviously, they use satellites, which are not impacted by earthquakes down here on the ground. They are expensive, and I'm pretty sure you have to have a subscription. I don't think it's a one-time cost. You have to pay in order to use these. And if you were a mountaineer kind of thing, and you're constantly out in the middle of nowhere where there's no reception, they might be a good option. A little pricey, for an emergency thing. So we're going to talk about powering devices from a car battery. Yeah. Okay. So option number one. So let's say you bought a radio. Let's say you bought a Gmrs radio, and the power is down, or I'm sorry, we're talking about cell phones right now. Your cell phone is dying, and you are sitting in your car. What can you do as far as charging it up? And you can use the battery in your car. So option number one is you sit in your car, you turn the key on, at least a little bit. You're not going to turn the motor over, but you're going to turn the key on. And you're going to plug in your phone and charge it up like you probably do all the time driving around. So you can do that. It is very inefficient, because when you turn the key to your car, you're sending electricity to all kinds of places. Your whole car is energized. So that battery is powering a lot of things that you're not using, when all you want is that little cigarette lighter to light up and have power. So we're going to talk about option number two, and that's charging directly from your car battery. So you would take the car battery out of your car, or I guess you could just leave it there. You're going to take off the normal charging cables on your battery, and you're going to get something that's called a battery adapter. So those alligator clips hook to the positive and negative poles on your battery, just like, if you were going to jumpstart your car. And the other end of it is a makeshift cigarette lighter. So now you need a cigarette lighter adapter, not super expensive. My guess is most of you on the call have them already. And that is how you charge your cell phone. So you can charge your cell phone directly from your car battery with this fairly inexpensive adapter. And then on your, sorry, I'm looking at chat. So the little chargers could work too, the jumper packs. Mary, I'm guessing you're talking about like FRS radio or something like that?
No, but you can get those little portable jump your car. They'll charge your phone or do all that sort of thing.
I do not believe well, I know that's not the same thing, because that's a battery. That's a battery that you're feeding into your car battery because your car battery's dead.
But they
This
charge
system,
a
you're
cell
actually,
phone. They'll charge a cell phone, or you can run a computer
okay,
off them.
okay, smart. Then yeah, same thing. Probably a lot more convenient than a battery. I don't happen to have one of those things. That's a really smart idea. I assumed they were just for jump starting your battery. I didn't realize you could charge anything else off of them. Excellent, thank you, Mary. So you could charge your cell phone from your car battery, or like Mary said, one of the little chargers, the jumper packs too. And then there's another way to charge directly from your car battery. You're going to use this thing called an inverter. They're about $50. I put the one that I bought, and I bought that one specifically because an electrician kind of guy recommended it, having to do with sine waves and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, I think it's a really good one. So this plugs into the cigarette lighter here. So battery to this adapter to the inverter. The cigarette lighter end goes into the cigarette lighter charging port. And then this inverter takes that electricity from your battery and turns it into electricity that we're used to having in our home. So it's 110 voltage AC current, same stuff that comes out of your wall. So you can plug anything into this. You could plug a regular phone charger. I think I have that here. Yeah. So you could use the regular charger from that you use in your house to charge your cell phone. So that's another way. This is less efficient because you're messing with the electricity. You lose about 25% when you use an inverter, and you're turning it into a different kind of electricity, but you're messing with it. You're going from 12 volt to 110 volt. So you do lose about 25% efficiency, and that stuff's on your handout. A healthy car battery should be able to charge pretty much any smartphone, Samsung, iPhone, whatever, 20 to 30 times. And that's using just the adapter, just the alligator clip device, the $10 device. And one of the things you want to think about, if you're using your car battery to power anything, whether it's a cell phone or a radio, or maybe even a laptop or something like that, you want to make sure that if you want to start that car again, you can't drain the battery all the way down. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to. So these numbers, and I've given you a really interesting article on this whole thing about charging your cell phone off your car battery and how much you can charge it, how much energy you can pull out of your battery, but still be able to start your car. I would recommend reading that article. It's really good. But you don't want to kill your battery if your plan is to drive away at some point. Depending on if we were to have a big earthquake or a large disaster, it may be more important to me to keep my cell phone charged than it is to be able to start my car and drive away, because maybe driving away is not an option. So you just have to keep in mind that you don't want to run your battery all the way down if you want the option of driving away. And then if you do drain your battery all the way down, that 20 to 30 times is going to be like 40 to 60 times. So you get quite a few charges out of your car battery, especially if you're willing to completely drain your battery. And then again, if you use that inverter and you take the electricity coming out of your car is DC, direct current, it changes it to AC, alternating current. That's what the inverter does. And when you make that switch, you lose about 25% of the power. So you're not going to be able to charge your smartphone as many times, but it may be worthwhile to you. Maybe there's something else you have that you really need to plug in. Maybe it's your laptop. Maybe it's, I don't know. There's devices like CPAP machines and that kind of stuff. I haven't gone very far into figuring out how much electricity those charge. And maybe you could charge a CPAP battery twice off a car battery. I really don't know. I haven't done the math yet, but I think I've given you a start at figuring that out if it's important to you. And if you do figure it out, please let me know. I'd love to include that information in classes and then share it with the other hub captains. Let's see, where am I going here? Oh, so this is if you want to use your car battery to charge your radio. And I'm, for the most part, talking about the Gmrs radios because that's the one I have and that's the one I've done research on. So again, you're using a car battery, you're using the same adapter that we were talking about with your cell phone, same inverter. And then you can plug your, so it's hard, a little bit hard to see, it's a small picture, but this is the charging device for the Gmrs radio that we recommend you buy. This plugs into the wall, this little cord plugs into the back of this charging device, and your radio just sits there and stays charged. So this would plug into the inverter, and then that's the Gmrs radio that we're recommending you buy. So that's a system you could use. There is another system, it's a little bit cheaper, and I'll show you that next. So again, starting with the car battery, using that same adapter we keep using, and then this is a device, it's called a battery eliminator, which is kind of a weird title until you figure out what it does. I assumed I was charging a second battery, but this is not. This, I have to stay plugged into the battery, and then this is actually the back of my radio. So I take off the battery that's there and I put this on, but I have to stay connected. I can't, yeah, this is not an actual battery. It's just a way to get battery. It's just a way to get power to the radio. So if I use this system, I am stuck to within about 5 feet of that car battery. I can't go very far. I can't take my radio and walk away. So it's not the most convenient, but it's there. Okay, thanks, Sheila. I see what you wrote in the chat. So this is another system, and again, all this information is on your handout list. So I have both. I have this eliminator, and I also have the inverter. I probably shouldn't have bought the inverter. I don't think I'll ever need it, but anyway, a couple little devices if you're interested. So I'm going to stop for just a second and pause. Does anybody have any questions about any of these gadgets to keep their battery, to keep their radio or their cell phone charged? Not seeing hands raised. Okay, we're going to keep going. So that's about it. We talked about landlines, we talked about texting, we talked about radios, the other options of the satellite messengers and the mesh network texting devices, and then how to get power from your car battery to power your phone, your radio, and potentially other items. Please make a plan. It's nice to be able to communicate, but you don't want to be devising your plan over text or over radio. You want to kind of know what everybody in your household's going to do after a large disaster. And then this is just a way to confirm with everybody that, yes, we're following the plan. Yes, we're going to meet at Tom's house, or we're going to meet by the boat shed, or whatever your plan is. This isn't the time to make the plan. This is the time to execute the plan. So make your plan now and execute it if you ever need to. And then any questions you have, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm going to stop sharing this, and happy to chat with anybody that has questions.
So I had a question about the mesh network. So does it require, so if you had an iPhone and someone else had a smartphone, can they talk to each other with the mesh network?
That's a good question. My guess is yes, but I don't know, Debbie. I haven't bought them and I don't know that much about them. But my guess is you could. Frank said the mesh network seems to be kind of on the wane. There was an issue with one of the leaders, which was GoTenna. They kind of stepped back, but they're still pushing out radios. Yeah, I know. I just looked up GoTenna. They are still viable. That's kind of why I put Beartooth up there. I think that's probably the more preferred one. I know something I wanted to share with you guys, and I forgot about it till just now. All right. Yeah, I put a bunch of stuff on the handout that I didn't actually put in the presentation here. So this is a little difficult to see, but I'm happy to send this to anybody that buys the GMRS radio that we're recommending. And the reason we recommend this radio is it's fairly easy to use. The cost isn't bad. Like I said, it's about $60. And somebody verified that today on Amazon. The really cool things about it is you can not only talk to other people using GMRS radio, but you can listen in on ham radio signals, ham radio frequencies. So you can listen to people that are talking on the ham radio. You can't talk, but you can listen in. And this document I'm showing you probably doesn't make much sense. It is folded in half. So this is the right side of the document and this is the left side of the document. But over here on the right side, these are channels, channel 107 through channel 113. And these are all NOAA weather stations. If you do want to get a GMRS radio, I have the ability, and there's other people, but I know I can. I can hook your radio up to my laptop computer and download all of this information. And this is just the pretty part. This is the pretty stuff you need. But to actually program a radio, you have to know quite a few numbers, and it's the frequency. It's the frequency that channel corresponds to, and the offset, and the tone, and all kinds of stuff. So there's all this programming stuff behind this. This is the pretty piece that makes this all work for people like me that have no desire to program a radio. But I do have the capability of plugging anybody's GMRS radio, this type of radio, into my laptop using a program called Chirp, and it spits out all of this. It programs the GMRS radio to be set to this. So if everybody in your household is programmed the same way, then you can say, let's go to channel 13 and let's talk to one another. It's difficult to explain until you physically have a radio in front of you. And then I'm happy to do more explaining. I'm happy to do, I'm happy if you can get 5 people together, and this is what I put on your handout. If you can get 5 people together, I will come and program your 5 radios, and then I will show you how to work your radio. We will go through all of the buttons up here, how to turn it on, how to toggle back and forth between the different screens. We'll talk about the radio, doing the Monday night check-ins that somebody mentioned, how to listen to the regular radio, some notes about how to smartly listen to your radio. If you hold your radio sideways, it doesn't work very well. You really have to have the antenna running straight up and down, parallel to the ground, what the different buttons mean. Happy to go through all that. But this is only this GMRS radio, which is why I don't talk about it that much in this class. You have to really be committed to A, buying GMRS, and B, buying this particular GMRS radio. It's the only one I know how to operate. So happy to get more involved with you guys and explain more of this and get you fairly comfortable talking on the radio. We do it outside. I can program the radios from the back of my car with the hatch back up, so nothing gets wet. And, you know, everybody grabs a radio and we spread out in the parking lot and we talk to one another. So,
How do we contact you,
Yeah.
Ann, if we want to do that?
yeah, my email's on there. It's seattleprepares@gmail.com. So yeah, order your radios, charge them up, and then give me a buzz, and I'll make time to come out and program them for you and show you how to use them.